We're back with another episode of Before You Buy, that show where we give you some straight up gameplay and our first impressions of the latest games releasing. As usual, it's me, Jake Baldino, and today we're talking about Resident Evil 2. I've been looking forward to this one for a long time, got my hands on a review copy, been playing it a ton. This is a complete 100% remake of the classic game from 1998 that, full disclosure, as a young, weird second or third grader, I was totally obsessed with. And I'll come right out of the gate here and say, this is a fantastic game that updates the classic for 2019 in all the right ways. For me, there are pretty much no missteps. It didn't miss the point or make much of a bad change anywhere. The game feels like it was made by people who worship the original, and this game is clearly treated with reverence that you'll appreciate, especially if you played through the original, and even more so if you obsessed over the original. But before I move forward, just a heads up too, this footage was captured on a PS4 Pro, and I've specially tried to edit it to avoid spoilers as much as possible, although I consider almost everything in the game to be a spoiler just because the game is way more effective when you are surprised. Still, I'm trying to keep it to early stuff just for you guys. I have seen other videos and screenshots out there that show far more, but I want to keep it simpler. But yeah, anyway, importantly enough, the game presents a fairly, mostly self-contained story that newcomers can experience and have a ton of fun with. Thankfully, you can jump into this as your first Resident Evil game. It's the perfect place to start too, because Resident Evil 2 is where things start getting really freaking crazy. Resident Evil 2 itself is challenging, it's scary, and it's replayable. Exactly what I was hoping for. While it felt completely familiar to me, there were enough moments that still kept me on my toes nicely enough, especially when it came to replaying different scenarios. Resident Evil 2 essentially takes the best stuff from Resident Evil 7, which, I thought was a good game. It takes up the cleaned up inventory management that harkens to the originals, the streamlined but still challenging puzzles, the difficulty balancing and near perfect item distribution, and of course, the absolutely awesome graphical engine. And it takes all that and it puts it all in third person. And now, I have to say, holy shit, first-person Resident Evil was fun, yeah, but I really want every Resident Evil game to play just like Resident Evil 2 from now on. In a lot of ways, it feels like such a good return to true survival horror form. You're increasingly outmatched as the game goes on, and more enemies and creatures are introduced, and you always feel like you never have enough healing items, or there are more enemies than there are bullets, and not enough boards to cover up every window to save you from zombie troubles. Every item spent, picked up, dropped, or left behind almost becomes a calculated decision by the end of the game, and that's what makes it almost like addictive in nature. And enemy types shake it up too. Lickers work differently and require almost a bit of confined close quarters stealth, and the Tyrant, or Mr. X as we used to call him, he acts as like a wandering enemy in the environment, searching and hunting for you, but you can often at least hear his big scary stomping footsteps as he comes. It just works as a really good scare tactic for the environment. Even if he's nowhere around, you hear him stomping away somewhere far away. So just the fact that you know he's out there will kind of always give you the chills. But the zombies are the main show, and they did such a good job with them here. They're absolutely terrifying. They're relentless, a bit more unpredictable than you'd expect, and they have all sorts of movements and make nasty sounds and can be blasted to pieces if you're good. These zombies are some of the best and most detailed we've seen in a game in some time. Even though in typical Resident Evil fashion, it is better off if you avoid enemies and weave past them more than anything, but the game still manages to shake up areas where you were otherwise comfortable in surprising ways. Now, I will say the combat knife is now a breakable weapon that now also doubles as an expendable item to escape from a grab or a zombie, similar to the original Resident Evil remake. But having a knife that breaks also means that if you have no bullets and no knife or other escape items, then you literally can't do anything. And sometimes you just gotta take a hit for the team. I think some more modern game players who've never played a game like this might be frustrated having no defensive capabilities, just a heads up. But I think most of you won't mind that, especially if you've played a few survival horror games. And thankfully, between puzzles and items, the game environment once again feels like one big Rubik's Cube you constantly bang your head against until you figure it out section by section, and that's great. Resident Evil 7 had elements of that, but Resident Evil 2 thankfully brings it back full freaking force. The story does move at a more smooth and also consistent pace this time around, but what I really dig is that it gives more characters a little bit of time to shine. Ada Wong feels less one-dimensional, Sherry has a bit more, Annette is less annoying, and even Chief Irons and Marvin the Cop are fleshed out. Plus, interestingly enough, Claire and Leon actually interact more than once. It's not a lot, but it's still pretty interesting, and the characters have a little bit of chemistry and not super ultra cringy voice acting like in the old game. I really just enjoyed watching everything unfold on screen, whatever it was. Plus, you also do get like a newish enemy type and a whole new area to the game that totally makes sense in its inclusion. It's actually better than what the original game did, and it's a great idea. I'm not going to explain what it is here for spoilers, but essentially, in Leon's story you deal with one character, and in Claire's story you deal with another character, and while that used to happen in the same place, now Claire's character takes place in a completely different and more relevant location, and it's awesome. But of course, to see all that, you're going to need to play through everything more than once, and like I said, the game does a good job of adding replay value with lots of secrets, items, different scenarios, different skins, and other incentives just to, bring you along. So while your first playthrough with Leon or Claire might disappoint you if you look at the clock, you only took like 7 or 8 hours, you should know that it's a Resident Evil game and it's far from over. Rolling the credits after your first playthrough doesn't really mean shit, honestly. But once you do play through enough, you unlock the 4th Survivor mode and Tofu mode, allowing you to kind of play through a quick, fun side adventure that lets you just shoot more things. Capcom also just announced that they're adding a free update with another playable mode that lets you experience small side stories with other characters. Characters very much that, once again, are being fleshed out that were barely touched upon in the original game, so I think that's really cool. And the fact that this thing is being released totally free should be applauded. Free is good. Lastly though, this game looks incredible. There's nothing better than a creepy dark hallway in this game with a flashlight. Characters and enemies look great. The effects are spooky and atmospheric, and the Resident Evil engine, like I said, is just really damn good. Sound is also something I highly recommend playing with headphones, because not only is it scary sounding, but the music is solid too. I do think it's bullshit that the classic music is locked behind a special edition of the game or whatever. Totally lame. I am really, seriously not a fan of that. But the new game music is memorable enough, and actually echoes the old games in very subtle ways that I really appreciate. There's a lot of little teeny tiny nods here and there, from scenarios to little clues in the environments that harkens back to the original games that I just love. Anyway, you're probably mad that I'm not dunking on this game, but it's a very good Resident Evil game. If the franchise continues forward in this direction, I'm all about it. We need more survival horror games, and I'm excited for a new generation of people to experience weird-ass Resident Evil stuff. So my recommendation is, when this game drops, go for it. But of course, that's a before you buy. I give you some pros, some cons, and some personal opinion. So now I definitely want to hear yours down in the comments. Let's talk about Resident Evil. I want to know what your favorite Resident Evil game is. Let's talk about Nemesis for a second. Maybe if this game does well, maybe they'll continue remaking them and we'll get Nemesis. I don't know. It's just spitballing. I want to talk anything with you guys Resident Evil down in the comments. But of course, if you got more from me, definitely reach out to me. Hit me up on Twitter and Instagram at Jake Baldino. But as always, if you learned a thing or two, clicking the like button is the best way you can help us out. We really do appreciate that. And if you're new, you should consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell, just because we put out videos every single day, so you'll always get something. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.
Looks like we're walking from here.